Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining Onset's webinar on complying with the CDC's vaccine pharmaceutical storage guidelines. And my name is Jamie Pierce. I'm Onset's VP of Marketing and InTemp Segment Manager at Onset. And I'll be joined by my co-presenter, Colin Weingarten, who is InTemp's Program Manager. And we have quite a few attendees today, actually quite a few from overseas as well. So we appreciate our international visitors taking the time to join us as well. All right, next slide. So hopefully you can hear what I'm saying, but if not, it's a good prompt slide that, how to turn your audio on so you can both speak if you do have a story you'd like to share, and as well, this is an interactive presentation, so you'll see a question box which you'll be able to expand to enter in your questions. The webinar itself will last about 60 minutes, and it is being recorded, and a copy of it will be made to all attendees. Also, a heads up that if we don't get to your questions, we will, all of them are recorded as well. So someone from the Onset team will follow back up with you if we don't have a chance to answer during the presentation. So again, as you go through the presentation, if you do have a question or would like to share your experiences, please put that in the question field. We will be reading through the question feedback as we go along to look for members of the audience who'd like to share their experiences, and we will turn over the microphone to you in those cases. So we'd certainly love that participation, and we'd certainly appreciate that kind of feedback, because this is intended to be an interactive event. And again, use the question field to provide us the questions and let us know you'd like to participate. When you, if you are chosen, we'd appreciate you keep your responses to about a couple minutes so we can keep the flow of the presentation going. And also, as we go through the presentation, you'll see we have poll questions throughout, and we will share the results. You'll be able to see those live as we go through the webinar, that you can see the other attendees' responses. All right. So from an agenda perspective, what we'll start out with is a discussion of the CDC and FDA guidelines of where really drives the requirements for data loggers, or digital data loggers as they're called out in the CDC guidelines. And we'll go into a little bit of background about where they came from and why the standards were established, and then recognize some of the business and regulatory challenges in meeting those. And then after that, I'll turn the presentation over to Colin, and Colin will go over the different data logger and digital data logger alternatives we recognize you all have out there, so it can be confusing as to what options you have. And then we'll go into Onset solution, and then just very briefly a company overview at the end. So with that, start out a little bit on the guidelines themselves. Again, the focus of this presentation is on the CDC guidelines, and we will go into those in more details, which are specific to vaccine storage and handling. And they actually are really living under the umbrella of the GDP, or Good Distribution Practice guidelines, that really flow from the FDA. So we do recognize that there is a broader regulatory environment out there. Another good source for GDP requirements is the US Pharmacopoeia organization, but that really establishes on the GDP side a lot of the overarching guidelines for good distribution practices, and covers a large array of monitoring solutions, but also the standards for doing the qualifications and validations. The CDC's guidelines are more specific to vaccine storage and handling, and they're focused more on the specifics for both the vaccine for children's program and similar types of storage programs. So next slide. And with the CDC's toolkit, when you look at their toolkit, really right in the very beginning, in the beginning of their overall guidelines, they really call out really the overarching reason for the standards in the first place, which is the obvious, that they have found that there is a previous to establishing these kind of standards, there was a significant risk to wasted vaccines, or worse, you'd have a vaccine that didn't have the correct potency, resulting in a poor immune response for patients. And then the obvious side effect of that is patients start to lose confidence. And so then you'd have additional problems from there. And next slide. And then additional background to the CDC's guidelines themselves was really a NIST study that really would really be considered the original background to the CDC's toolkit guidelines. And in 2010, a joint U.S. Department of Commerce NIST study was developed to actually look at the different types of temperature monitoring devices, and actually also included the different types of refrigeration and freezer systems that were used for the storage of vaccines. And it was really out of that study that the use of digital data loggers was recommended for storage. Next slide. And when you look at the conclusions from that September 2010 NIST U.S. Chamber of Commerce study, you can see right in there that what they really called out shouldn't be overly surprising. So if you have a liquid thermometer or something that does not have that continuous recording, you're really going to be risking and subject to the fluctuations that you're naturally going to see in that refrigerator with door openings, power losses. So your current temperature, even if your nurse or attendant is doing that twice a day and per the monitoring guidelines, they are going to miss that historical background that you would get from a digital data logger. And on the bottom, you actually see two graphs there, and what's represented is an example of a thermometer, a liquid thermometer on the left, and then the obvious fluctuations with that. On the right is a glycol-filled thermometer. Obviously, you get the historical benefit of that, but you also see the impact of the fluctuations without a buffered solution. And that's the whole reason behind a glycol bottle. You're trying to simulate the actual vaccines that are in refrigeration. Okay, next slide. So with that as a background, obviously then, presents some significant regulatory and business challenges for clinics, hospitals, and pharma manufacturers trying to comply with these regulations. The obvious is that you need continuous temperature data monitoring. You need to comply with all the qualifications and the validations, and certainly the CDC's requirements for what is a compliant digital data logger in glycol and the daily checks. At the same time, you end up balancing that with obviously the cost reductions and the cost pressures that we recognize you're all under, the risk of lawsuits, all the documentation that you need to maintain in parallel, training of staff. Certainly if you have high turnover, can be a real challenge. So a system that's very easy to understand and use is really critical. And then of course your own internal QA compliance. Next slide. So with that, we'll get to our first poll question, and this is one of the questions where we would be actually interested in any of your positive user experiences with data loggers in refrigeration applications, and so feel free to put that into your question responses. And with that, we'll do the first poll question. And what you see up on your screen is the questions, and you should be able to answer the question from your screen. And then as you go through that, we'll be able to show you the results of how those came out live. So again, it's, do you currently use data loggers? Yes, with Onset. You use another brand of data logger, or are you using a manual type system today, a chart recorder or manual thermometer, or are you just using the built-in thermometer from your refrigerator? So it's always good to have a background of understanding what the audience uses as far as their systems today. So we're sort of waiting for those poll responses coming through, and should be able to see those shortly. I'm just waiting for the last few responses. And there you go. So actually a fairly significant number of the responses responded they're already using Onset data loggers, and some are using some competitive brands. And hopefully we'll show you a great alternative today. And then there were a few that are just using the existing refrigerator temperature today. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to my co-presenter, Colin, to take you through the alternative data loggers that are available today, as well as Onset solution. Go ahead, Colin.
Sorry about that. It seems to toggle between screens for some reason. So I'm going to talk about some of the CDC digital data logger guidelines, and then talk about some of the alternatives as well. If you do want to share some positive experiences with using data loggers and data logger systems, even if it's not our own system, not Onset system, let us know, and we'll give you a chance to speak after I go through these slides. But for CDC guidelines, what they are requiring is dedicated continuous data logging. So they don't want to see any gaps where something might have happened without anybody knowing that could affect the vaccine. They want to make sure that it is accurate, that there is traceability so that they know who's using the system, who's doing what. They want a system in there that shows alarms or critical temperature excursions in some type of way. Probe and glycol, specifically a detachable probe and glycol, reporting capabilities, and a low battery indicator. So those are the things that are required. Now, again, these are for the CDC. When you get up more to the FDA, GDP level, the requirements are not as extensive. They're looking more for accuracy, traceability, alarming, and that kind of stuff, but you don't need the detachable probe and glycol. But everything else is fairly consistent. So again, CDC is very closely tied to GDP regulations. And then with recommendations from the CDC, so things that you don't necessarily need but is encouraged, is having easily adjustable settings. So that is being able to change the min and max alarms on your logger, how quickly or how often it records data, and those types of things. Has a digital display, a centrally managed database to store and distribute all the data from the loggers, data export and reporting tools, and automated email and text alerts for excursions, which is something that our system definitely does have. So it does have the capability to notify you of critical temperature excursions through email and or text, but I'll get into details of that a little bit later. So here's some data logger alternatives out there. You have USB and Wi-Fi. Cellular really isn't used for storage. Just grouping that in there though, in case you do use cellular loggers for transportation, which is what it's really for. But with USB loggers, it's a very manual process. You have to manually remove the loggers, open up the fridge or whatever storage area you're using loggers in. So if it's racking, you have to take it down from the racking just to plug it in, offload the data, and get the reports you need, which don't have any automation, so you have to match up the reports with any other data that you need to combine it with. It's limited, sometimes limited and difficult to program or reprogram those loggers, and most of them do not offer a battery replacement option. Wi-Fi and cellular, the major issues with that is it relies on the dependability of the network. So if the Wi-Fi or the cellular connection is not great, then you're not going to have a lot of success with getting automated notifications or alerts. It could have costly initial hardware investment and typically expensive annual plans for data uploads. And then we have our solution, which uses low energy Bluetooth communication. So it is a relatively low cost option. It has the beauty of Bluetooth, it has remote automation capabilities that can be enabled with a gateway or our mobile app. So that allows the devices to talk to the loggers and get notifications and send you alerts if there are temperature excursions and automate your reports. So that is a huge advantage to using Bluetooth, our Bluetooth solution. It does provide flexible, and I'm putting in quotations here, touchless solutions. Obviously, nothing is 100% touchless, but this is something that is becoming more important these days, especially in the age of coronavirus and pandemics. Having something that is automated and relatively or mostly touchless is very important. They're very easy to program and use, and they have typically a more reliable connection. Admittedly, sometimes you do have issues with that connection. It is Bluetooth. There are limitations, of course, but more often than not, you're going to get connection to that logger the first time, every time. So now we're going to go into the second discussion question. Well, actually, looking at the questions here, I don't see anybody who has volunteered to share their experience with using data loggers yet, but if you do, again, go ahead and type that into the question box and we'll give you the ability to speak. I'll keep an eye on that, but not seeing anything now, I'm going to move into the second question. We can always come back if we need to. But the second question is, do you use software with your loggers to manage data and reports? So again, there will be a poll coming up and it says, yes, I use cloud-based software. Yes, I use downloadable PC-based software, or no, I use USB loggers and import the data to your own software or to your own files and storage systems. So here we're really trying to get an idea of what kind of solutions are being used out there, and then also get a sense of what might be some of your successes with them and some of your frustrations with them. But we'll talk about any issues or bad experiences you might have in general towards the end of the presentation. So if you want to talk about your successes with these, that'd be great. Again, we really heavily encourage discussion during this. So we'll let this go for a little bit longer, and looks like we're ready to go. Perfect. All right, so we see that most people are using cloud-based software, which is fantastic. We really think that is a wonderful solution, and enables a lot of different capabilities. Like you said, our solution is cloud-based, so there's a lot of automation with there. Some people are using downloadable PC-based software, and then some are still using USB loggers. So I definitely would love to hear if anybody wants to share their experiences with using USB loggers, whether or not they still enjoy that or if they are looking for another solution. And then also about the downloadable PC-based. So I see one question here. I recently had a vaccine excursion, currently have our data logger at our backup freezer location. Since I don't have the cloud, I have to go to this location every time. I have to download updated temps. Is there a better way other than to use the cloud? It's a great question that I think our solution really addresses. It allows for out of hour viewing. So you're able to get those notifications if critical temperature alarms happen outside of work hours. Another topic we'll actually be talking about a little later on. But the cloud system does alert you with email and text. It gives you a data port right there with the email so that you're able to see exactly what's going on, so you don't have to make your way all the way in. So that's one of the great things about using a cloud-based system. All right, I'm going to move forward. And again, if you would like to speak, please feel free to either raise your hand or just address it in the question box there. I'm going to discuss the Onset solution a little bit more in depth. So here's a pretty good holistic view of what our solution is. We have the Bluetooth loggers, which connect to the mobile app and the gateway, and then in turn communicate with our cloud system. So again, doing this via Bluetooth and having the cloud system is what really allows a lot of automation and really allows you to get or to obtain features such as getting alarms and notifications, even if you're not on premise, and be able to get some visibility while you're off-site or even on-site so you can quickly react. Our cloud-based system does allow for centralized data storage and reporting on a secure 21 CFR Part 11 compliant cloud solution. So it is compliant. You will not be able to delete or alter data. Again, one of the biggest things that we want to highlight here is it does allow for automation. So you will be notified if there is an alarm. You can use the gateways to actually program your logger so you don't have to physically be on site if you don't need to be, as long as the loggers are in range of the gateway. The gateway has a range of about 30 meters or 100 feet. The gateway can do your programming and start the loggers up. It can download them. It can either restart them, stop them completely, or continue the data set for continued recording. And it can automate your reporting, so you can get automated reporting or reports by using our gateway. And then the mobile app is another solution you can use. It has less functionality in terms of automation. So the mobile app allows you to view loggers and data in real time as long as you're in range of the loggers. You can do downloads from there. You can configure the loggers. What you're missing by using the mobile app only is the automatic notifications, the automatic reporting, those automation things you get with the gateway. But you can also use the gateway and mobile app in tandem. Before I get to discussion question 3, give a chance for anybody to share their experiences if they would like to. I'm going to check the questions real quick. So here's actually a really great experience. Thank you very, very much for sharing this. So it says, we too had an excursion in temperature. Thanks to the cloud, we got emails and text messages to alert us. The issue we had was that due to COVID-19, the only person on site was the guard who was able to solve the refrigerator issue and get it back to the correct inner temperature. But we found out that we couldn't deactivate the alarm remotely via InTemp Connect. So even though the excursion had been solved, the logger kept on the visual and audio alarm. So some great things there. That does kind of prove how great a cloud and Bluetooth solution is. It allows you to be more proactive, excuse me, and allow people to react to alarms more quickly if they are offsite, if it is after hours. So even if it's a security guard, the system is so simple that a security guard can either use a mobile app or do whatever they need to do to respond to the issue, and in this case, close the fridge, restore power, whatever it might be. To address the other part, with our CX400 loggers, you are able to actually mute the alarm just by pressing one of the buttons on the logger. And you can program the gateway to perform a download whenever an alarm occurs. So if you purchase our gateway, the gateway will recognize an alarm occurred, and then it will download the logger immediately, and then that will actually clear the alarm for you. So using the gateway is very helpful in this situation. Okay, I'm just reading through the questions here again. A lot of the same things about how the cloud system and Bluetooth allows you to respond quickly and be more proactive, how it would get the alarms if you're not on site. So thank you very much again for providing your experiences here. So I'm going to move on to the third question now. And the third poll question is, have you ever been at an organization that has lost product due to a temperature excursion? So we'll run that poll now, and it's a simple yes or no. And here we would really love if anybody would want to speak about an experience about what happened, what did they have to do, what could have been done better. Would be really valuable information, I think, for everybody. And then we can talk a little bit about, again, how our system can help out with temperature excursions. So we're going to give this a little more time. Okay, we're about to close. And I'm sorry about the technical issues. It keeps popping me back off to the wrong screen. I have gotten some requests about pricing. So I will, if you want to know specific pricing for some of our loggers, we have a full list on the website. I will get you on the pricing for our 400 loggers and for our gateway, since that is something that people are interested in. So I'll get that to you in just a bit. Moving forward with excuse me, I think we might have somebody who wants to share. No, okay, we're good. So back to the presentation.
Yeah, we're getting some great questions, Colin. It's just, I think most are doing it via the question fields.
Yep. Yeah, if you have anything that you caught, Jamie, that you want to talk about, please feel free if I miss something.
Oh, doing great. All good.
All right. So here is the fourth discussion question. There's no poll for this one. It's how do you handle critical temperature excursions outside of your business hours? So this is kind of related to the last question is, have you experienced critical temperature excursions? Have you lost some of that product? What did you do in response to it? And what were some of your frustrations, successes? And then how do you deal with them outside of business hours when, in the case of one of our users mentioned before, there might only be security guard, especially with this day and age where maybe only security personnel or other personnel who have no knowledge of the system are on site because of COVID-19. So I will, again, give a couple of seconds to see if anybody wants to speak up and share their experiences. If not, I will continue with the presentation. Okay, so we actually, it looks like we have one person who's looking to, or a couple people looking to share. So if Jessica, you can select somebody and allow them to share their experience, that'd be great.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. The question was, how do you handle critical temperature excursions outside of business hours? And the only time I've been informed of a power outage was when the school was made aware of it. And that was because, so we're located in a school, actually. We're a school-based health center, and we provide VFC vaccines, and we are located inside of a school building. If a power outage was to happen within our facility, which has happened, that was what happened most recently, the school is not aware, and I was just not informed. And we thankfully did not lose our vaccines, but it was an excursion that lasted like 50 some hours.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But when there was a school-wide power outage, only then was I informed, and I had to I just had to come in and rescue these vaccines and transport them. But the data loggers at that time, before we got Onset, had not, I was not informed any other way.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I think that brings up a really good point about our system. So not only will our system notify you of alarm excursions, so you can set that however up you think is best, so you can get quicker notifications about when an alarm does occur. We actually have notifications for the gateway itself. So if you do have a power outage, if internet does go down, or for whatever reason the gateway just gets unplugged or something like that, our system will actually notify you after an hour of inactivity that the gateway is missing. So even that gives you an indication that something's wrong and gives you a chance to more quickly react, especially in the case that you were just mentioning, when the power goes out and you have absolutely no idea until 50 hours later. So thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you everyone for, actually we do have one other person, so yeah, let's allow them to talk and hear another experience. So it looks like we have Genesis, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So in the past, before we got our loggers, we experienced the same thing where if the power went out, we wouldn't have known. But at our clinics, we took it a step forward, and we did a mock excursion on our refrigerators and freezer units, so we know how much time we have in order to get to the clinic before our vaccines enter into an excursion mode. So
Okay.
when we get the alarm from the gateway saying that it hasn't connected to the loggers in an hour, we know it's either the power is out or the internet is down. So then we know we have at least 5 hours to get to the clinic. If it's during the weekend, we all have a designated, I put in the phone numbers for several managers to get the alarms at the same time, and then we will decide this is your weekend, and the next weekend will be my weekend, the following weekend will be another manager's weekend, and then they will go into whichever clinic and move the vaccines if we have to.
Yeah, thank you for that. So how did that work out for you? Did it seem like it was a lot of extra work? Were you looking for something better, or did that seem to be working out okay for you?
And so it works out fine for us, because that way we know we if it's a power outage or we're unsure, what we do is we can either call the electrical company just to make sure there's nothing else in the area that's down, so we can determine, okay, this is just the internet that's down, so we can either go back to sleep depending on the time of day it is, or we will make our way towards the clinics.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think again, so it sounds like in your case, it is working out. The great thing about our system is it makes it a little bit of less manual process, right? So you can get notified automatically when these things happen. And one good point that you had brought up is you had this whole team ready to go on the weekends. So our system does allow you to put in the same alert multiple times so that multiple people can be alerted. And then you can then figure out a process internally to figure out, okay, we've all been alerted, who's able to go. You can communicate with each other and say, I can handle this and then deal with the alarm. So it kind of helps even that with that part of the process as well, and developing that team who are all being notified and reacting to the alarms. Thank you again for that. I'm going to move on now and go through some of more details in InTemp solution, a lot of which we talked about already. But with the CX5000 gateway and the InTemp platform, again, you can receive these automatic email and or text notifications. So you get that visibility when you're off-site or even when you're on-site and you're just not around the area. And you can get notified whenever things are even remotely getting close to a critical excursion. So you can set up your alarms to warn you first, and then allow you to take some time to react to it and prevent any product spoilage. So you can create these proactive solutions to ensure that the products are being stored safely by even putting in these warning alarms instead of absolute alarms where by that time it's too late, the product is bad. So of course, this can help you reduce costs associated with product spoilage, or it saves you the pain of having to reorder vaccines and putting together documentation and going through that whole process, which can be burdensome. And when you do receive the notification, the great thing is in that email or even the text message will provide a link so that you can easily get the data report for that alarm. And you quickly do analysis there to say, okay, do I really need to react, or do I have some time, or can I leave it alone? And then start doing your QA analysis right then and there. So discussion question 5, do you have to edit or organize the data from the loggers for your report? So here, we're really trying to get a better sense of how robust are your reporting systems right now? Are you having to do things manually? Are you easily able to manipulate and adjust data to show exactly the kind of reports you have? Or sorry, the kind of data you need to show. So the selections here are, yes, I have to extensively edit or organize the data. Yes, I have to do a lot of editing. Yes, I have a moderate amount. I barely need to edit, or no, I don't have to edit or organize the data at all. So again, we're just trying to get a sense of what maybe some of your pain points are. And if you want to share your experiences with reporting, maybe for an auditor or having to submit to the CDC documentations around an excursion, whatever you would like to share, we are definitely open to having people speak. So I'm seeing here that one person is saying that they love how the Onset presents its raw and tabular data. We do have an option that is CDC compliant, so we have a CDC specific report for VFC customers. The one kind of complaint there is it can be tricky to build reports. So one great thing about Onset is we really do try to do our best to give you the training you need if you are one of our customers to really understand the system. So if you are having issues, we can definitely work out with you, and you can always contact our technical services team to figure out how can you more easily build a report. Is this something that you're missing? And we are always striving to enhance our system, make it easier to use. So every few months we do release updates to our system and really trying to make it user friendly. Okay, see some other questions in as we're closing the poll now. So it said, someone mentioned it would be nice if we can pinpoint on the temperature graphs what the spikes out for quality checking and auditing were. So I'm actually going to discuss that a little bit with you in the next couple of slides, actually. So we see that a lot of people aren't having to do too much editing, which is great. That's always good to know, even if it's not our own system. I know documentation can be really painful sometimes, especially if you're releasing to an auditor. But it looks like a good amount of people are having at least some moderate amount of, or having to do some moderate amount of editing or organizing. And the rest seem to be pretty good. So a couple of things I want to talk about. So to go back to the last question, we do allow for annotation with the CX400s, where you can actually, if you click on the annotation button, you can click on the graph and enter a note there to talk about your temperature excursion. And the note could be anything. You can say, okay, here's this temperature excursion. This is because the power went out, or this is because the door went open. And then you can put in another annotation to say, this is what we did in response to it. And those will actually go into the reports so that you have a more robust report to send to CDC or an auditor to show what happened and what you did in response. So whether the product was still good and you kept it and you were able to distribute to patients, or if you had to throw out the product or whatever it might be. One key thing that I really like to highlight here is the ability to add data tags. These data tags are 100% customizable, so you can make them anything you want. So you can say that I want to organize and group my data by a clinic name, or by the refrigerator ID, or by a room in a hospital. You could, if you're doing any transportation, you can say, okay, I needed to transport these vaccines to a sister clinic, and I use this courier with this type of packaging. And what this does is, again, allows you to organize and group your data to see, to organize your data to show it in exactly the way you want to show it and what makes most sense for you. It allows you to quickly identify things, so you can identify which storage unit an alarm belonged to. And then you can reduce costs. So you can actually track refrigerator and freezer performance this way. So by knowing which storage unit it goes to what data, you can see over time, okay, is this refrigerator starting to degrade? Do I need to have some work done to it? Is it time to replace the refrigerator? Does this brand of refrigerator just not work? So using our data tags, you can really customize how you organize data and help reduce costs by figuring out questions like, how good are my refrigeration units performing? And then we offer a lot of different ways to customize reporting, so you can choose what data you want to include in the reports, and organize and group the data again with the data tags. You can select multiple different analysis types, so you can do raw data. Again, we have a CDC version, and you can group it by summary statistics, which will tie directly in with those data tags you create. And as I mentioned before, you can add annotations to individual downloads, so you can explain right there in the report what happened, why it was an excursion, what did you do, what was the corrective action. And then with these custom reports, you can actually automate them. So if you want to see a particular report every day, every week, every month, you can automate that report, and we can show you how to do it. So before I get into question 6, I'm going to quickly look at some of the questions we have here. Can we have different visibility to the data for different user levels? So we do have a lot of permission capabilities, so the permissions can be very customizable. At the moment, the data cannot be hidden. You can organize your data by creating multiple accounts. So if you don't want one clinic seeing another clinic's data, you could have multiple accounts. And then as a system administrator for all those accounts, you can go in and view everybody's account, even though they can't view each other. So we do have ways to work with you right now to help hide data. And again, there's a lot of customization for permissions to control what users can and cannot do. So going into question 6 now, how much time do you spend training staff on temperature monitoring systems? So answers here: too much time, a lot of time, a moderate amount of time, not much time at all, or no time at all. And the reason why we're asking this question is we know, especially with VFC customers, clinics, hospitals, one of the biggest issues that you deal with is high turnover rates. So we're trying to understand how much is training somebody on a new temperature monitoring system affecting your daily practices? Is it burdensome? Are you having to leave your patients to deal with vaccines? Are your resources not being utilized because you're constantly having to work with the system or pay attention to your vaccines? Again, if you would like to share some of your experiences about training staff and some of the frustrations you may or may not have, we would definitely love anybody to talk. Okay, and we're going to be closing soon. All right, so we have 14% of people saying too much time, so that's not too surprising. I mean, again, these systems can be complicated. They can take away time from what you really need to do, and with the turnover rate in your industries, that can make it a real issue. Most people said a moderate amount of time, or not much time, but it seems like no matter what, there is some level of training. And actually, we have another person willing to share again. It looks like Genesis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, so I train all the new managers that come on with the InTemp system. So once I set them up with an account, I kind of have like a video call and we go over it. The one issue that we run into, and it usually depends on the person that I'm training, is the follow-up when they're trying to do it by themselves. And it's usually with the mobile version when they're getting into the clinic, or if they have an excursion or the alarm is going off, and they usually like call me back to just help them like walk through it. But usually it takes about an hour for me to just walk them through how to, view reports and how to monitor the system, and to teach them about the differences between the cloud alarm and the alarm that they'll get. If what we did with our company is we set cloud alarms to have a buffer so that when those go off, they can either call the clinic or know they have a certain amount of time before an excursion actually happens. So it's just me teaching them the difference between that and understanding when they get the text messages what to do and how to read in whether it's a cloud or the logger alarm itself.
Sure.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah, so as Janice was saying, we do have different types of alarms where one will actually alert you. Those are your logger alarms, and then your cloud alarms are just for additional reporting purposes. So you can use a combination of those to get your notifications, and then also do an additional analysis report to say, okay, this product is either good or bad. So thank you again, Genesis, for sharing. I think that speaks a lot to some of the training that does need to be done, even with our system and with any system in general. But we really do believe that we've created a solution that requires little to no training. You were saying, Genesis, that it takes you about an hour. So we have a system where as long as you do an initial setup, everything else can be automated, and you can customize user permissions so that they don't actually need to do anything unless you require internally for them to understand something or do something within the system. But we can set it up so the loggers get programmed immediately. We can set it up so the loggers get downloaded immediately and either restarted or stopped. We can have the reporting sent out immediately or automated in an automated way. Again, we have the CDC compliant option. So there is definitely setup that goes into this, and we do try to work with our customers to really figure out what are their needs, what are their processes, and create a setup with them so that we can set them up for success, and that when the end user is finally using it, all they have to do is turn things on and the system is ready to go. it is doing everything else for them. Discussion question 7. So what is your biggest pain point with storage monitoring? I'm going to go through this question a little bit quickly since we have another question coming up right after. But this is for storage monitoring in general. So is it editing and organizing the data in your reports? Is it training staff? Is it product spoilage, managing temperature excursions? Or if it's none of those things, please feel free to put in something into the questions box. We would love to know if there's something else out there that is really frustrating for you in terms of doing storage monitoring in general. So one comment here is a lot of our clinics are in different states, so we want everybody to work independently in the event that need to pull a report or reset a logger. So yeah, again, you can customize our system to do whatever you really need. So if your requirements are you need to have some people working with the system because they might have different state requirements or they need to have different responsibilities or want them to be independent. You know, I think the system is still simple enough for people to easily understand how to do some things. We do try our best to put notes into the system itself to say, this is what this means, this is what it means if you enable this feature. So hopefully that helps it a lot. And again, we're constantly trying to improve the ease of use for everyone. We want a really straightforward system. So we're going to close the polls now. Staff members responsible for advice, like or leaves changing the account to a new staff member. So if the staff members are all part of the same account, you don't have to worry about one staff member leaving. You can use the same account and they'll all have access to the same data. And you can just simply add them to that same account with the permissions, and the transition is really smooth, I think. So I think even transitioning from one member to another is pretty simple. So go through these results real quickly. Most of you are saying managing temperature excursions. So great. I really hope that you see the value in our system with automated notifications and data reports that will notify you when an excursion happens to be more proactive, and knowing that you can set alarms to act as warnings so you can address and be more proactive before it's too late. A lot of people are saying editing and organizing data and reports. Again, I think having the data tags and being able to add annotations really help with this so that you're not having to do a lot of manual work with exporting raw data and showing it the way you need to show it for whoever it might be, an auditor, internal QA, or something else. And look in the comment boxes a little bit later to see what others are, but I'm going to move on to question 8. What is your biggest pain point using data loggers and software for storage monitoring? So now I'm really focusing on the software portion of it. So what are your some biggest frustrations with using software in general? Is the process too manual and time consuming? Data loggers do not have all the features they require. Loggers are unreliable. Software is just too complicated. Or again, if there's something else, please let us know in the question box what the other pain point is. So again, we're looking at the loggers and the software itself specifically now, as opposed to storage monitoring as a whole. So give it a little bit more time there for this. Again, if anybody would like to share their experience, please let us know. We love the participation we've been getting, and it's been very valuable to hear some of these issues and some of the successes that you've had, and it's really good to understand what's working and what isn't working for you, because as a company, our biggest mission is to create a system that works for you. We look to try to allow customization as much as possible and allow it to be easy to use system that requires little training. We, for customers at additional costs, have created customer reports if you need that, have integrated into other systems if you need that. So if you have a building management system, we've integrated into ERP systems and offer APIs. So we really look to try to be that company that is able to customize options for you and make the system really work in the best way possible that meets all of your needs. So hearing a lot of the feedback, this really helps us to understand what's going on, why things are working or not working, what we should continue to do, what we need to improve on and create new features for. So some results here, it looks like it's pretty split between the process is too manual and time consuming. So again, that goes back to trainings and using the system in general, and then the software is too complicated. So yeah, we definitely understand that these systems can be very complicated. So we do try to work as much as possible with our customers on setting up the system to really work for them, to go through what things mean so that when they set it up, everything from that point on is automated. So again, understanding how to program loggers and start them up using the gateway, getting automated reports, getting automated notifications for your alarms. So we'll work with you to get that initial setup to meet your needs, and then everything from there should be automated so that you're not spending a lot of time in these systems. And again, we do our best to try to make the system as simple as possible and then help you the rest of the way if you really need it. So I'm going to move forward a little bit just for the sake of time. I will just briefly go over our products. So we have our CX400 loggers for storage monitoring. They do meet all the 402s, specifically meet CDC and VFC guidelines. The 403 does not, because it does not have the detachable probe with glycol bottle. Our 403 loggers are actually the one in the middle, so they have been endorsed by multiple state VFC programs. They are multi-use, so they're not one time. You can use them as much as you want. They have audible and visual alarms in combination with their automated alarming systems through the cloud system. They are NIST calibrated with a 3-year recalibration program. So the recalibration program is actually fantastic. We send you a logger before your current logger goes bad so that you're doing continuous monitoring. And then you send it back to us, and then it's actually, you get the new logger at a discounted rate through the recalibration program. Our loggers are extremely reliable, IP54 rating, shock resistant. By that I mean, if you drop it, it's not going to be the biggest deal in the world. Dust resistant, water resistant, and we guarantee data retention. So even if you do have power outage or internet disruption, data is going to stay on the logger, or it'll stay on the gateway, and when things are back up and running, it'll shoot it up right to the cloud. And then, of course, they are AA battery replaceable to make it easier for you. The gateway, that's what allows a lot of your automation. So again, starting loggers, getting automated reports, downloading loggers. Again, it ensures 100% data recovery with secure wireless or Ethernet transactions. And it is what enables your real-time alerts. And then our cloud system. We definitely seen some people say, cloud systems are complicated, and there's definitely a lot in our system, but it's something we definitely try to work with you on and go through and help you understand. So we really try to make it as easy to manage as possible. It is a free system with a secure cloud database, allows customizable user access, so different permissions, intuitive alert and notification setups, advanced search tool integrated with analytics and reports. And again, it's fully validated 21 CFR Part 11 system for GDP and CDC GLP compliance. So we're talking about here in the States and internationally, it is compliant across the board. We make sure to make all of our systems and our loggers compliant across the world as best as we can. The mobile application here, you can view and manage all your loggers and gateways from a central point. So you can see current temperatures, see if there's any alarms. You can do program a logger, stop a logger. And then any information that is captured on the app gets synced immediately with the cloud system as well. Just a little bit on us before I go into any final questions. We are considered a world leader in data loggers, and again, it's because of our reliability and our ability to create customizable solutions that makes us a world leader with data loggers. We were founded in 1981 with currently about 140 employees, so we are relatively small, which allows us to make us nimble and be able to offer these kind of customizable solutions. We do have a global network of distributors if you need to purchase loggers from a closer resource. Our sole focus is on data logging and monitoring, and we are currently ISO 9001:2015 compliant. That's really the end of the show. I'm going to look through some questions if people want to spend a little bit more time here. We maybe have a couple more minutes to go through things. If we didn't answer your questions at the moment, we will have a record of this so we can go in and reach out to you if there's anything outstanding. You can reach out to us. Here's my email address as well if you want to reach out to me directly. You can go on our website to reach out to us to get to our sales staff or to our client services. So we are here for you. We're here to help you out. And if you have any other questions, please do reach out to us. And again, we'll go through the questions you put here if we don't have time for it. So
yeah, that's great, Colin. Agreed. It was really great to get the audience questions. Made for a great interactive session.
Yeah, thank you so much for everybody who did participate. Actually, I'll leave it to you, Jamie, if there's anything you want to go over, anything you want to talk about real quick.
I think we're all set. I would just say, thank you again for everyone's time. I know how busy everyone is, especially given the environment we're all going through right now. But I think the feedback was great. As you pointed out, Colin, if there are any questions we didn't get to during the webinar, we will follow up afterwards, and we'll be sharing the recording with everyone as well.
Yes. Thank you all again for attending. We are at that time now, so we hope this is valuable to you, and we hope to hear from you in the future. Thank you very much.